NCBW, West Palm Beach chapter, continues to advocate on behalf of Black women and girls in the areas of education, leadership, economic empowerment. We thank you for joining us this evening as we continue on with one of our programs, Hope for Girls. We have a monthly discussion, which occurs the second and fourth Wednesday of the month at 6:30 p.m. Tonight, I think you've heard, we're focusing on social media wellness, and we will now get started with our program.
Good evening, everybody. It is my pleasure to present our presenter today, Ms. Dominique Mortimer. She's a graduate of Mount Holyoke College, as well as Florida State School of Law. She is employed by the First District Court of Appeals, and I'm sure we're going to enjoy today's presentation on social media. Go ahead, Dominique. Thank you for joining us.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for the introduction and the hospitality. It's a pleasure to be before everybody. Happy Wednesday. I wanted to confirm these are all of the participants. Has everyone been let in?
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to begin the presentation. I'm going to share my screen. Social media is something that I think we're all knowledgeable of, whether or not we have pages on the platforms, the most popular of which are Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, in no particular order. And, you know, while it's a tool, like all tools, there are a specific set of dangers that present themselves on social media. And so it's a pleasure to cover just a couple of threats that we should be aware of when navigating this multimedia space, but predominantly that teens or parents of teens or those that interact with teens should be aware of, and you know, a great refresher for adults who overwhelmingly spend a lot of time on social media as well.
The idea of, you know, posting and having a lot of people see it can definitely be kind of scary.
You know, if you're a teenager, you're gonna make bad decisions sometimes.
They can screenshot it, they can do so many things to save that, and they can edit it in ways that you won't want them to.
Whether or not you think it'll go away, it's there. Anything you post online, you're stuck with.
So, you know, that's a great primer for what social media is. Social media is online or our online platforms that are specifically designed to share social connections, relationships, develop personal relationships with people in a digital space. So of course, the more popular pages again are Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, even the Bible app. If you have the app on your phone, the more traditional, most popular downloaded platform is a social media space. You know, I don't know how many of us have created personal accounts on the Bible app, but on the Bible app, you can curate reading plans and prayer groups and join prayer calls that you meet people on the Bible app, create friend groups and lists similar to Facebook, but of course the center of that one being faith-based reading of the Bible, where your friends read the plans together, and there's a discussion board on the Bible. And I'm happy to go through each app. If there are questions that will be put in the chat, there's a space later in the presentation specifically carved out for questions as well. On to some statistics though. 90% of teenagers aged 13 to 17 use social media. This survey was curated by the American Psychiatric Association. And the numbers were drawn up in 2020. However, there was a caveat to the 90% that only 32% truthfully reported their use of social media. So if only 32% truthfully reported and the number is already at 90, I just want to take a moment of personal privilege and make it greater than 95%. So let's say 95% of teenagers aged 13 to 17 use social media. 75% of that number reporting at 32% accuracy report having at least one active social media profile. So even if that is Instagram, which is more predominant amongst that age group, then the number of accounts on Instagram are predominantly people that are still in high school, 13 to 17. The average teen, and I found this number like not necessarily startling in the age of so much being virtual, but just breathtaking, because I can say I was very guilty of this as a teenager. The average teen is online almost 9 hours a day, not including time that is carved out for homework or reading assignments. And of course, we should also look at ourselves, because children live what they learn. And so 73% of adults are on YouTube for what is this, all of these numbers on this chart are people that use these platforms 4 or more hours a day. So 75% of adults, 73%, excuse me, use YouTube 4 hours or in excess of 4 hours a day. Facebook is then predominantly used, and then the third is Instagram. And believe it or not, YouTube can also be a social media space. I could just, let's from a show of hands, how many of us have taken the time to partake in either a worship service or auxiliary meeting and taking the time to view that on YouTube in at least in the last year or a half. So I members of my family take the time to watch churches all over our international space every week via YouTube. And so in that way, it's also a social media space. So adults are also very guilty of that. And this number was also provided from a 2020 study. So these are rather accurate numbers. As of 2020, and I'm gonna go back to this slide for a minute, 13 to 17 is of course the more popular the phase teen. Of course, those that are young at heart are also included in that number. But biologically, teens cater to 13 to 17. But I think it's also very important to understand that 46% of 11-year-olds were found to have social media accounts, 51% of 12-year-olds, and 28% of 10-year-olds. And I think that number is, not only is it startling, but it's also problematic legally, because contracts, we all know the age of majority is important, but contracts on social media platforms are designed for those that are 13 or older with parental supervision. So anything younger than that is already advised against from the corporate perspective. So I think when we have a village of leaders like those that are present tonight, it's specifically important for us to remember that these social media platforms are something, and they're being publicized as important enough to lie about your age, because you have 46% of 12-year-olds that are being untruthful about their age in order to create these pages. There are, of course, strengths and opportunities and blessings in using social media spaces. Of course, just as we mentioned, church in this last year and a half, a lot of things I'll be very happy to say goodbye and get riddance to in the COVID-19 era, but there are some that I hope can stay. And I think one thing that I hope will remain are so many of the digital accommodations and opportunities that have manifested itself in this age, especially virtual church and virtual opportunities, being able to watch international conferences take shape in space. And that happens on social media. I love watching a show and going on Twitter and searching the hashtag associated with a show. For the sake of transparency, one of my favorite shows to search on the web is 90 Day Fiance. It's a guilty pleasure. And there's nothing like seeing someone thinking what you're thinking about a plot or a character, and they're somewhere that you've never visited or even heard of. I know a lot of people do it with like Real Housewives and growing up hip hop, etc. They'll look on the web to see what other people are thinking or following along. I found this storyline super sweet. This young lady, the African-American, put a post on Twitter that she met this young lady on a dinner cruise in 2006, and they were able to be reconnected 2 million tweets, 2 million tweets later. And of course, Twitter is a space different than Facebook that is more of a rapid fire social media page. It's designed for people to jot their thoughts down and curate their thoughts on their Twitter timeline. And then, of course, we've all heard of a family reunion or a military reunion. They're very popular on Facebook. Flash mobs. There was a time when flash mobs were like the thing. Everybody wanted to be in a flash mob or wanted to watch one take place in public forums. But also family reunions, people that have been separated over distance and time, reunite based on social media. And then learning about what people are going through or experiencing when people are experiencing disasters and need support and relief from other people around the globe. It's very important to get yourself or your information out on Twitter or other social media pages. And most recently, pages like, or spaces like TikTok. People like to not only shout out the bad things that happen on this, but we have to praise the good things that happen. And I think social media is a captive space that, for a 30-second movie or a 5-minute speech, you can learn something new about somebody.
Something about us is amazing. The love, the rhythm, the rap, the hip hop, the R&B, the soul within us, the African drum beat in our feet. The soul within us is special.
Or different groups that you don't know a lot about.
These are my glasses, aren't they cute? They help me to read. You wouldn't feel pity towards me because I wear them. That would be silly. This is my wheelchair. Isn't it cool? It helps me to get around. But you do pity me because I use one, and I know this because of the head tilt and sound you make when you meet me. My wheelchair gives me freedom. We all use assistive tech to help us in our day-to-day lives. My wheelchair that helps me get around is no different to your car that helps you get around. So keep your pity in your pants.
And finally, different cultures. But just like there are great things with all good things, there are also things that you have to be advised against. And some of the weaknesses and threats that we should all be armed or knowledgeable of, especially in social media, are for both teens and adults, of course, oversharing personal information. Well, oversharing has a lot of different definitions, but on social media, it takes form in things that you wouldn't want your, it's safe to say, great grandmother to know about you, or things that when you look in the mirror, you wouldn't want to become public information.
Where I'm going, but I think before I'm posting, all my pictures have been chosen, not just posting whatever. I might show you where I'm going, but I think before I'm posting, all my pictures have been chosen, not just posting whatever.
So many sites to post pics and post comments and make your friends say, holy smokes, like Robin. Your posts live forever, that's a long time. So don't overshare when you go online. Yeah, your digital footprint will stick with you. So stop and think before you post that picture or message. Flowcab, let's go. The top 10 things to think about before you post. Number 1, ask yourself, would you say it in real life? If the answer's no, don't post it online. And if you wouldn't want it said about you, don't post it about someone else. That's the golden rule. Number 2, are your posts vain and narcissistic about your perfect life, all designed to elicit jealousy and envy in the people who read it? If so, don't post that brag, delete it. Number 3, that's TMI, folks.
I have a rash.
Well, I didn't want to know.
Number 4,
are you posting every detail of your life? Who in their right mind is gonna find that nice? Woke up, hashtag bagel, hashtag shower, and 20 more posts in the next half hour. Think about the reader when you're sharing. Edit your posting, your friends will keep caring.
Number 5,
a bit like 4, here's what else post. Keep your relationship details to yourself. You don't need to post every hug and sunset. That might make your single friends feel upset. A moment still has meaning if you don't post it. Know this. Now let me get back and focus. Number 6, the cryptic cliffhanger, man. Like,
Dude, no one understands.
it's a little desperate, begging for attention. Just be upfront off the bat with what you mentioned. Number 7, are your posts all complaining? You really need pity just because it's raining. Number 8, curate your photos like a museum. Don't post pics you wouldn't want your grandma seeing. Goes double for anything risky or risque that could affect your future in a big way. And that's doubly true if it's a photo of a friend and not just you.
Number 9,
check your privacy settings. I mean it, want creeps of future employers to read it. You really want your Insta face tweets like concrete? I mean all over the streets.
Number 10,
Post smart, okay, and spread love.
show you where I'm going, but I think before I'm posting, all my pictures have been chosen, not just posting whatever. I might show you where I'm going, but I think before I'm posting, all my pictures have been chosen, not just posting whatever.
And oversharing can take many different forms for different age groups. You know, it's of course, I think a general rule is, like it mentioned in the video, moments still have meaning when they aren't posted. And some things you should keep a secret. I think that's just the golden rule. Not everything should make its way to the digital web, but there are things that you can post. Identity, things you don't want to post include personal information. There's always the risk, and I think this is also a general rule across all ages and spaces and expertise in social media use. Identity theft is real. Being hacked is real. How many of us, when we've been on a social media space or had a conversation via email with someone and they say, don't open anything from me, I've been hacked. How many of us have seen that in the last 12 months? Received one message like that? I know I have received, I could say 5 right now, offhand. And a lot of that comes from social media use, whether or not it's your personal social media use that has given someone illicit access to your contact list and they used it to hack you or to steal your identity. But when they get access to your contact list, then sometimes if someone just opens that email, however virtuous they may be in their intention, it's also going to make their contact list vulnerable. So, you know, very similar, and not to be hyperbolic about the necessity of safety on social media, but just as so many of us wore masks or tried to convince COVID deniers to wear masks to protect other people, it's just as important to protect other people by being vigilant on social media and not sharing things that don't belong in the World Wide Web. With respect to personal information, your name, especially teenagers, pictures, vulnerable pictures, pictures that detail where you live are not recommended, or, you know, I would say not allowed to be posted on social media for your own safety. Cyberbullying is also a weakness and a threat that adults especially need to be knowledgeable about and perceive. There are so many resources that are available for students to learn about cyberbullying, but I think I would hope that groups that have the stature of your group give enough credence to cyberbullying and the effects that it has on children and teenage suicide as a result of cyberbullying. I cannot put enough weight to the effect cyberbullying has had in the last 20 years. There's a statistic that reports that the increase in the amount of elementary age suicides has increased by 42% in the last 5 years. And that number is just disturbing on so many accounts. But I think being vigilant about your children and your village members, how far your arm reaches is important, because you never know whose life you may touch, and just giving them a word of caution about letting things that are said on social media affect them in their mental health. Because, you know, there's a proverb that goes around, a Twitter proverb, so to speak. You know, social media is the highlight reel. You're only going to see my best days on social media. You're not going to see the days where I'm downtrodden and eating cup of noodles from Monday to Thursday and a cup of ice on Friday trying to make it to Saturday. But, you know, you'll see when it's bottle service and lobster for lunch and caviar for dinner. Like, and it's an unfair advantage. So, you know, I don't think it's fair to put a lot of weight on it, because everybody has a day when they're eating a 4 for $4. You know, they might not post it, but you can be proud of that too. And lastly, sexting and consequences. And this is not a moment to turn your camera off and get shy, because, you know, sometimes it's unsolicited. You'll have somebody you don't even know in your DMs on Instagram telling you what they could send you or show you for you to see, and you click that, and next thing you know, your phone is locked down with pop-ups or your computer is locked down with pop-ups. Or you can trust somebody and trust the relationship and try to share a vulnerable moment with someone by sending a photo, which I would not recommend against, but it happens to people. And then it starts raining in the relationship, and not in a good way. And that vulnerable moment is then turned into a nightmare. There are legal consequences for that. People can go to jail, you know, but there are also a lot of mental health consequences for that. And if that happens to anybody, or if you're pressured into sending a photo, it's not okay. You know, like you can go to your guidance counselor at school. And if you don't know who your guidance counselor is, I'm sure you can go to some of the more seasoned women on this phone call tonight. Or, you know, I would volunteer myself. You can call me, and not only will that person be reprimanded for trying you and asking for a photo, but also, you know, we can escalate those concerns, because that is not a correct use of social media. Or in fact, not only sexting and consequences, because sometimes friendships can have detrimental effects or can go through roller coasters on social media. You go from being her best friend or his best friend to now you're no longer the cool kid in school, and you feel like you're the butt of the inside joke on social media. And you feel like everybody's in on the joke and they're sharing it and trying to make fun of you. That's not okay either. And I would encourage you to seek professional help or the help of people on this call tonight if that happens to you either as well, because that's not allowed. So a couple of suggestions I have for social media use and how to correctly or safely use social media on a vigilant level is to turn off location services on apps that are social media based. Okay, so I'm sorry, that was a generalization. A lot of us have iPhones. And so in the iPhone sphere, it's rather easy to navigate your location settings. And so if you would like personal help on how to do that with an Android, I'm happy to look it up for you. But I'm going to be transparent. I don't know. So in an iPhone, you would go to your settings, which are your general settings for your phone or your iPad. The great thing about Apple products is the landscape is the same for their function. And then you would type in location at the top in the search bar. And you can go through each app and say what it has permission to do. And of course you would need you would like for maps, or I have my maps available to see my precise location, but I don't think I don't even have a Facebook app on your phone. I'm a dinosaur there, but I don't have the Facebook app. I would not recommend downloading the Facebook app. If you do, if you have chosen to download the Facebook app and you use it regularly enough, I would turn off my location on there. You'll also see your ads go down, and your scam likely calls go down if you disconnect your social media from your location. And I don't know about y'all, but I get a call about a call warranty every day. Teens should also never share their addresses, telephone numbers, and I'm going to take it a level further. People should not share their addresses on social media. Facebook does not need to know where you live. Like, if you can put a general location. There are 3 million people in Miami-Dade County, but they don't need to know that I call Cutler Bay my home. That's, I think, a little too close for comfort. You don't need to put your social security number in a messenger ever, or your banking info. Parents, check in with your teens or your grandchildren or your godchildren. And also teens, if you see your grandmother struggling or thinking about connecting with someone who got stuck in Africa and needs $300 because there's a family emergency, and you know that email just sounds fictitious, or it just, you know, it's cap, cut it out. Like, stop capping on social media. Tell them that you need proof, or if you know it's to be false because that's a rather popular scam, like scam likely that, and block the contact for your grandparent. And you know, this last bullet point I put here because, again, the American Psychiatric Association suggested it, but I'm not familiar with it. It's called a friend and follow agreement. Because when I was growing up and I made the decision on my own without my mother's blessing to make a social media page, I didn't have a chance to negotiate a contract about her checking it. She would just reach her hand out and ask for my phone. So, you know, but apparently the American Psychiatric Association contrarily suggests that children negotiate a contract with their parents for households that operate in that manner. And they negotiate about what the parent is allowed to comment on their social media, or if the parent is allowed to comment on their social media, with the understanding that they must friend their parent. Whatever is the discretion of your household, I would say you act safely. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them now.
I have one question, and young people and adults, feel free to unmute yourself and ask questions as you'd like. My one question is that my location, also, if I'm not mistaken, when I've seen people on social media checking in from their location, and I know that right now, human trafficking is very, very prevalent. And what are your suggestions in terms of the checking in and the photo?
Thank you so much for the question, Ms. Clay, and the reminder. You know, I'm sure with your many years exposed to the ills of society through law enforcement, you could definitely speak with more depth to this issue. But of course, we're all aware that human trafficking, organ harvesting, and just kidnapping of children and teens are at all-time highs. And so I would recommend that once you disable location services for platforms like Facebook, you don't manually override it by checking it. If you, as we covered in the PowerPoint, disconnect location services from apps like Facebook through your phone, then Facebook won't have access to your location. In order for you to check in, you would have to manually enter at that point in time how to or where you are for them to find out where you are. Additionally, you know, I forgot, forgive me, if you all would like to put your pages on private, we could do that now on the phone if you have an iPhone. If not, I'm happy to provide my personal information to any user of any age and walk you through that process. Because I would also suggest that all pages are on private, especially if you're a teen user.
I think it's also a good idea if you'll walk us through that, yes, but also as to how to put locations on private.
Okay, so starting with the locations, if you're an iPhone user, let's say you have the Instagram app on your phone and you don't want Instagram to have your location. And there's also another opportunity to do this when you first download any app and you open it for the first time, like Uber Eats that many of us may have been using rather frequently lately. If you open that app, it will present a map and a screenshot, and it'll ask your permission to get your location. And if you touch the map itself, it will take it on an iPhone from precise location to general location. And so sometimes for apps like Uber, I would recommend having your general location on, because of course the entire premise behind the use of the app is that you're meeting with somebody either for a pickup, a ride, or courier service. So back to location. And once you go to the settings in your phone and type in locations at the top, you would click share my location, or it's next to a cloud icon, and you should see a number of apps. That page pop up. I'm going to turn my brightness up. This page pop up with all of your apps. Sorry, guys. With all of your apps. My favorite app, Chick-fil-A, which of course has my location. We need them to know where I am. And you can look to the app that you might be disabling. Like, let's see. So a very popular app is Sneakers. Sneakers app is how Nike releases their most popular pairs, especially those that are very hard to obtain. And so I'm going to disable my location for Sneakers and make a note to myself to put it back there. So you click on the app.
But wait, can you go back? So we're in, maybe I'm the only one. I don't know.
No.
If I'm the only one, then I don't want you to do it. But okay, so we're in notifications. We're in settings and notifications.
Settings and location.
Settings and location.
Yes, ma'am. And then it's going to take you, it's going to be under privacy. It has a blue hand.
I don't see location.
In settings, a blue hand icon.
Okay.
Okay, you're gonna hit
privacy.
Location. Privacy.
Settings, privacy, locations. Okay.
And then you can, whichever app you're having the issue with, or you want to refine their location services or access to your location, you click that app, and then you'll have the following settings available. Never, ask next time, while using the app, and always. The only thing that I have set to always, that I consciously have set to always, is maps, because I have no sense of direction, and I always need guidance. So you can manipulate different apps from there. And this is where you will find social media apps if you haven't downloaded on your phone, like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat. That's a whole different presentation for a different day. But Snapchat, disable your location. So many horror stories there. And then if you want to work on making pages private, so I'll start with Instagram. So many of us are familiar with the beauty that is an Instagram explore page or home page. I'm not an Instagram user, but I'm also familiar with what an explore page looks like. It's the goal of so many people. You go to your profile picture, which is in the bottom right of the screen. You click that. You go to settings. I borrowed Instagram for the purposes of the presentation, but you will go to settings, and I don't know if that's visible to everyone, right at the top. Privacy. And then you would make your Instagram private, or make account private. And when I say private, the advantage of that are only people that you are consciously, because everyone should be curating their friend list and their connections on pages. No more follow for follow. And for our seasoned members tonight in the audience, follow for follow is a strategic tactic that is popular on Instagram, where your Instagram user will post someone's page. So I will say follow at Sangina Clay. For a great time, follow Sangina Clay on Instagram. And she would follow me and then repost my name with some compliment of some sort, asking her followers, which can be in excess of millions of people who I don't know, to follow my page as well. And there are so many dangers in that. Oh, I'm sorry, let me say this. And for Android users to disable location, thank you so much who dropped that in the chat. Android users, you're gonna go to settings, select location, and then toggle to off. Very straightforward, thank you. And thank you so much, Ashley, for the reminder. You know, I don't want to. There are already so limited, a very limited amount of jobs that are available to teenagers, especially those that are seeking to work from at age 14, like at Publix or in offices and spaces. But trust and believe, as early as 14 to as senior to 100, human resources have now, and I'm sure Ms. Clay would be happy to do an addendum to this, but one of the tactics or one of the clearances or hurdles you have to jump through in any profession at this juncture is a social media check. I can tell you professionally, I was an intern at an international corporation, and my very first day on the job, I walked into the office and I wiggled the mouse at the desk I was going to be sitting at and saw a Google search of my name and address come up on the page of my boss. So that was her very first impression of me was whatever came up on Google. So you want to be very conscious of that. And just personally, I Google everybody. People in my family will tell you, I Google myself every 3 months because I want to be very well informed about my brand and who I'm connecting my brand to. And I think it's at this juncture in 2021, after the candidacy and presidency of Donald Trump, we know how important words are and the volume and weight of words and the gravity they carry in a digital space. And sometimes effects that don't happen to other people will happen to you faster. So be very conscious of career consequences. On Twitter, it's much easier to protect your tweets and make your Twitter private, which allows only people that follow you on Twitter to see your tweets. But you'll go to settings, which is at the top, or the bird, I understand, in the app. I don't have Twitter, sorry guys. But you hit the bird, and then you hit settings, and then you hit protect your tweets. Done. Are there any other questions? Thank you so much for that, Ashley, that question.
So I have a question. Have you had any experience on any other jobs where social media has come into play?
Yeah, so my social media, of course, was examined with strict scrutiny when I was an intern, and that was, I feel like so long ago, but 2012. And more recently, in my new professional context, thank God, social media is something that's used very frequently to convict people. And you will see introductions of statements in court that people have made on social media. I have worked on appealed cases in a divorce context where Facebook messages helped nullify a prenup. It blew my mind. Like, because one spouse was able to subpoena Facebook messages because of who created access to Wi-Fi, there was an introduction made of messages that granted her more access to resources that were cultivated during a marriage. And so you want to be careful what you're sending in Messenger because nothing says a secret. Additionally, you know, people go live on Instagram and Facebook, and I read somewhere in the news, we're all aware, we were all, all aware of what happened on January 6th in Washington, D.C. And the FBI has come out and said, if you had a cell phone on you in the building, you're going to be prosecuted just because of how location services, again, works. And when you send a message or you share your location, which everybody who travels independently should be sharing their location with somebody they trust, one person. Even when I was, again, at the corporation and they were looking at candidates to give millions of dollars to in the community, organizations that they were going to be giving away resources to, the last box on the questionnaire was social media. For me to research their social media and to curate how I would describe them based on their social media use. And I will be honest with you, one guy had a red Solo cup in a profile photo, and the CEO of the corporation was like, oh, he drinks. It may be an unfair assumption, but social media, again, is that snapshot that either justifies what the assumption is or nullifies what the assumption is. And so because you have something vague, like a vape, you may not be using it, but because you've now associated yourself with someone who posts about vaping a lot or the myriad of flavors available, you're now seen as a smoker. And so you have to be careful of the habits you're co-signing. Thank you so much for that question, Dr. Clay.
There's several young people on the call. Do you have any questions you'd like to ask Attorney Mortimer? I know that the bullying using the cell phone is quite popular. I don't know if that's diminished over the last year or so because I'm out of the work circle now, but I know that that was pretty prevalent. Any questions, young people? Any questions, anybody? Any other questions or comments?
Young and young at heart.
I would just like to say that this has been a great presentation. I have learned a lot as a seasoned person, particularly going into the location. When I opened it up, it was showing always. I said, well, why would Sam's Club have to be always? So I learned a lot of different things that was checked. I don't know how it got checked as always or anything like that, but it has been changed to never. Thank you.
Glad I could help. And also in Facebook, everybody, and just one last point, in Facebook, you can also do the same thing with your location or your tracking of what you use your computer for. I am of the persuasion that you shouldn't use your work device for personal use. It's so easy to commingle and so hard to untwine. Like, just don't do it. But if it should happen, you would want to separate your site tracking. And so I'm happy if you reach out to me privately because it's a little more complex depending on what, if you're using a Mac or PC, but I'm happy to walk you through how to unconnect. And teenagers too, like if you're using your iPad that you got from Palm Beach County Public Schools or your computer that you got from Palm Beach County Public Schools to be on TikTok to make sure you could, baby girl, give me something. Yeah, don't do it. Just don't connect it because it's not recommended. And that's all I have. Thank you so much for the invitation.
I'm sorry, I do have a question.
I'm sorry, Ms. Bridget.
This is Bridget. What is your opinion or your thought with regard to when you were talking about social media pages or anything, LinkedIn?
Okay, so I definitely recommend LinkedIn as someone who I will transparently say is looking for employment in the Washington, D.C. area. Please connect with me if you'd like to speak about that. I am an avid user of LinkedIn, and I would say back to that chart in the presentation, speaking about adults who spend 4 or more hours on, that would be my guilty pleasure. I'm always on LinkedIn. I, though, would concur about the same things. You should not share. Jobs have ebbs and flows. There are peaks and valleys in employment. Don't share your valleys on social media, and don't share your valleys on LinkedIn. If you know that you are connected with people at your current station of employment that have access to what you're posting on LinkedIn, don't share that you are actively being recruited for other opportunities of employment, especially in the state of Florida, where you don't need cause to be terminated.
I'm just seeing more on LinkedIn, but I'm seeing not necessarily work-related things now. It's on some instances that I've seen, it's getting more like Facebook.
Exactly.
Like,
So
yeah,
sad.
that should not be going on LinkedIn, but I was just curious.
And you know, it's I think that is a twofold answer. It's encouraging because you see people using a platform that's about employment and gainful employment to connect and be conversational about industries. There's a lawyer that posts every day about a different tip in the law, well, effectively, you know, deliberating or trying to get the jury science, or using depositions to exclude for impeachment evidence later on in a trial. I love his page, and it's kind of serving a TikTok function on LinkedIn, but I would never share his videos on Facebook because that's not that forum. In that same vein, Facebook has created the market for social media. So whatever feature Facebook prioritizes as what every social media platform needs to allow, which is expressing your feelings. Let's say number one, expressing your feelings and being able to post pictures. You can now do that on every platform. You could post a picture of you reading the Bible on the Bible app. It's because Facebook has set the tone of the race. All of these other social media platforms are now trying to make a version of their own Facebook. Sad to say.
I think the other thing too is that social media tracks what you search for. And like you can be on Facebook, for example, and they've tracked what you're attracted to. And they'll start sending you, like you'll see ads pop up for things you may have searched for on another media or medium, and actually follow what your habits are in terms of your spending practices, your searching practices, and things like that. But I think the number one takeaway is that this stuff stays forever. Don't listen to people who tell you that one of those media things said only lasts for, I think, 2 days or something. That's not true. And so don't let anybody convince you to use social media with the thought that it will go away. I can tell you from experience that police agencies especially will pull stuff from you from the day you were born. And so you want to make sure that whatever you're posting is something you want to follow you for the rest of your life, because it never goes away.
And I agree with you. I just wanted to thank everyone for being on here today. I've been listening. I learned a lot. I'm one of those ones that check in everywhere I go. So I know I know I'm constantly being tracked, and it's just so funny. I left my phone in the car yesterday when I went out to dinner, and I went on a strip that had several different restaurants. And it was funny that when I got back in my car, I had a sponsorship ad for the exact restaurant that I ended up at, which I thought was just too funny. We're talking about even when you don't have your phone with you, you're still being tracked, and in some kind of way they know where you are. So it is so true. So I just want to thank you again for this great workshop and presentation. And I've been enjoying all of our Hope for Girls sessions lately. So I invite you to stay tuned. We have more to come. I know Miss Clay or Miss Presley will tell you about our next Hope for Girls event that we have. And I ask you to please come back and join us. And again, I thank the speaker and everyone for being here today.
And that was our president, Ms. Rhonda Rogers. I now turn it back over to our chairperson, Ms. Presley.
All right. Well, thank you again, Councilor Mortimer, for your fine presentation here and updates with social media. Again, keep in touch with us, as our next session will be the 28th. Let me look at the calendar here to be exact. The 28th, actually, of Wednesday, and you can tune into our Facebook for the next update. as far as the sessions go. Be sure to visit our website, ncbw-wpbchapter.org. And thank you once again for joining the session. Have a great evening.
Good night,
Thank
everybody.
you. Good night.
Thank you, Dominique.
Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mortimer.
Thank you, Supervisor Richardson.
Awesome job, Dominique.